Hello there. This is Chris Anderson, CE.Simgof. I'm going to take you through the complete custom bunker mesh tutorial for this little known par 3, kind of a hole in the wall hidden gem course. But I've got a screenshot up here you'll see of the reference I'm using, and then I'll show you in Blender what the meshes look like and how many changes we can make to meshes once they're complete, and how we're not locked into the way we've splined them, but also the ways that we might consider doing some extra splining to help us with this extra work we're doing in Blender. I'll put a link to the other video I did, a shorter one, on how and why we spline things, or I spline things with an outside edge custom around all the bunkers. So I won't go over that Inkscape portion on this, but I will jump into Blender and show you the total workflow for how we're going to do the custom bunkers on this course. The very first step is going to be identifying the way you've splined it, what each shape represents, and then figuring out how to join the certain meshes you want joined. You can see here we have an outside surround on each bunker. It's a little hard to see because we also have this custom 4 spline out here. This was planned to be used as a different mow pattern for the grass, but the same type of grass and grass physics as the general rough that's here around it. So for now I'm just gonna, since it's around our entire hole, we don't need to worry about merging that with other meshes. We could, but just for clarity, I am going to change this over in our materials drop down. I'm going to change it to standard rough. It's going to look exactly the same. Where is it? It's going to look exactly the same now as what's around it, but it's still its own separate shape. We are not merging that at this time, although we could. We're going to leave that. So now we're going to go in. Let's start on these easy ones over here. We have splined our extra surround here. We did it a little wide. We've got 2 loops. By loops, I mean you can see that there is, well, there's 3 actually. There's the outer loop and the inner loop, and then there's the center one, which goes all the way through. This is great. This gives us, those loops are the geometry we want when we're going to be doing modeling. As far as creating some slope on our own and stuff. We're not using the OPCD tools much at all in this tutorial. We'll use the vertex painting, which is super useful, but we're not going to be using any of the bunker, elevation, lip settings, any of that. It's all going to be by hand. So first step, this is eventually going to be, if you look at the screenshot, I'll pop it up right there. What you're going to see is it's going to have just a slightly deeper rough. We're just going to call it deep rough around each bunker. And it doesn't necessarily follow each bunker in an exact, consistent way that we have here on all these. For instance, when we eventually get over to the big one, you're going to see that we're going to need to create a different shape of outline, because the outline that they mow, it doesn't go down these tongues. It goes straight across, so you've got deep rough in a more general outline. But we're going to start over on these, and what we're going to do, we're going to shift select these 2 shapes right here. It might be a little harder for you guys to see what's going on with the wireframes. I'm going to turn that off for now. So I'm going to shift select my custom surround and my custom blend. I'm going to Control J, join those, go into vertex, select all, hit M for merge, and do by distance. That merged all the vertices that were together on the perimeters. Although I can already see I've got a couple, see these little ticks of yellow in here. That's where they didn't merge correctly. And I bet you if I grab this and try and move it, you'll see they're on top of each other yet. Oh no, they're together. So I don't know why we're getting that little bit of an outline. I'm going to change my distance to 001. It did remove 28 more, so I think now we should be good. Yep, I don't see that anymore. Okay, next, go over to our materials. We're going to remove the custom 4. We want this to all be the same material. And in fact, we're not going to use bunker blend. We're going to change it to deep rough. So that's our deep rough. We're going to do the same thing over here. Shift select these two, join them, go to vertex mode, select everything, merge by distance, remove to 178. Back to object mode, over here, remove custom 4, and change to deep rough. Okay, now what I want to do, these bunkers are close enough that the mowing, they wouldn't have mowed between through the middle. They would have done a general join here. So I'm going to take my rough and I'm going to go into face mode, and I am going to grab, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to grab the faces that look like, yeah, so maybe even that one. I'm grabbing the faces that are kind of on the way between these two. And I'm going to go up here. This isn't ideal, but we can change some of this. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to grab all these ones that are between. And I'm going to do P, shortcut key is P, to separate the selection. So now I've made a new mesh entirely. So you can see this is all by itself. I can hide it and unhide it. That's separate now from the other rough. I'm now going to join that with these other two, okay? Control J join with all selected, vertex mode, all, merge by distance. I see one vertex that doesn't have a match down here, so I'm going to go to the snap, and I'm going to snap it to there so that it's all matched. Now these are all one shape. They're still two different materials, so back to the material panel. Remove the rough. Now we have one rough shape. It's not as smooth and nice as our the ones we splined, but it's there. And what we can do, if we go, so what I just did was I shift selected both the rough that surrounds everything and this deep rough that we just created. Go to vertex mode. Now all the verts are here. Now any border spot, these are not joined meshes, even though we're editing both at the same time. If we selected a border or perimeter vertex, there's actually two here. So if I try to move it, it separates. Bad, we don't want holes. So to avoid that, without merging them, we're going to turn on proportional editing up here. That means any vertex near that vertex will also move. We can either make it huge, and when we move, it'll move everything around it. And the smaller we get, the less it will influence things. We need it pretty small right now because we just want those two that are on top of each other. The reason I'm going to do this, I'm going to hit the 7 key, which gives me top-down view. So I'm looking straight overhead. Now I can't move these up and down. They'll only go side to side. I am going to move these around on this border until they have a more straight, almost try and make it look as splined as I can to give it a gentle kind of excuse me, transition between these bunkers. Oops. Now this only works if proportional editing's on, otherwise you'd be separating these meshes. Now here's kind of a tricky spot. I'm going to kind of split the difference. I'm going to move that one in, and I'm going to move some of these out a little. Just trying to make the flow look reasonable. It's never going to be as smooth as it would be if you Inkscaped it. And you could draw an outer rough, but I would still recommend doing an offset around each bunker, that original custom 4, even if you also draw a deep rough around it. And the reason is it generates those loops, those consistent distance loops around the bunkers, which is what we're going to need for editing the actual modeling, the terrain, to make the terrain shaping. So now I'm going to go to the back here, and I'm going to move. I'm just going to start moving these out and in a little bit, and I'm just eyeballing and trying to make something that looks, at least from above, like a more consistent mow line. You know, I don't want it to look too sharp or too pointy, because that would not look like someone actually mowed it. Some of those edges will get softened when we do blends, which we are still going to do. You want to try and avoid moving things so much that you get really odd triangle distances like that. Try and keep the triangles reasonably spaced out so there's nothing too tight. I'm going to join these because it can be a problem if you've got some that join in the middle of a line like that. So now, if the terrain is really shaped already in this area, when you go off of the top view, you might see some of the vertices not where you expect or want them. I don't think we're going to run into that too much here. That looks pretty good. You can see it's a little odd through here. You can move by just doing up and down. If you hit the G and then the Z key, that'll only move it up and down. Oh, we need to turn on proportional. All right. Usually you don't have to worry about that too much. So now what we've created is a deep rough surround on these two bunkers. And we can get on with modeling. Now, to model these, I know that I'm not going to purposefully try and affect too much of the shape around the outside of the deep rough area. So I'm not going to join this whole thing to the rough shape around it. You can separate it when you're done. It'd be very safe because we wouldn't create any gaps, but it's not necessary and it's a little more work to fix it at the end. So what I am going to do is join it to the two bunkers. So I'm going to go, what I'm doing is I'm going to select the bunker, shift select the deep rough, and then I'm going to join, Control J, vertex mode, all vertexes, merge by distance. Now this should all be one shape. We are not going to remove materials. We want these to stay as sand traps. If we were to remove, like we were doing before, we lose our sand. We don't want that. Of course, we want those to stay as sand traps, and when we're done with modeling, then we can separate them. So we don't want to remove the sand, mainly because we'll use that material to separate them. They do need to be separated at the end of this back into their single mesh sand trap bunker shapes. So we're leaving that for now, but now we're ready to do the modeling. I'm just going to be taking a look at my reference off screen here, and I'm just going to check and see if there are any first thing I would look at was if there are any general landforms or movement that I want to work on first that I didn't do in the terrain in Unity. And I purposefully want these left sort of flat. I want to do a lot of the terrain work instead of in Unity. I want to do it more precisely inside of Blender. So in general, this looks right. You know, you've got a height back here behind the bunkers. I'm looking at off screen at the reference. The left side of this bunker is raised a bit. It goes up into this hillside. This hillside continues just a little more. There is a raise between the sand traps, which is there already. We don't need to worry about that too much. This one looks pretty accurate. There's maybe a little bit of a dip back here towards the front, but this looks pretty good. It's a pretty subtle difference over here. But anytime we're going to affect vertices anywhere near these bunkers, so for instance, I want to add a little hillside here, and that hillside won't just be localized to right here. It'll flow into here. It might even slightly affect the back of the green. So I'm going to use my box selection. I'm going to drag over all these meshes that will activate everything. Then I'll go into vertex mode. Now I'm not going to merge any of these, but if I leave proportional editing on, as long as every mesh in the area is selected, if I move something and I have selected this vertex in Z axis, which means it'll only go up and down, and I make this a huge influence, you'll see the other shapes will also move, right? Now, I didn't select the T-box back here, so if I got too out of control with my proportional editing, it will separate that. So you do have to be careful, make sure you've selected more than you need. But I'm only doing a small amount of work here, so I'm going to make this fairly small. I don't want just 1 point, so I'm just going to raise, I'm going to select kind of, this is where I want the top of that hill to kind of be influencing. So my goal is to raise all this up so that the back corner of this bunker has a hill to kind of cut into. So select everything, then hit G and Z, because I want to go up and down. I'm going to make it, you know, pretty big influence here. And I'm watching this one next to it. I'm looking at the reference. This one left of that we haven't done any work on yet actually sits kind of low. So once I get this lifted up a little bit, which I like like that, as long as I have these selected, I'm going to use this chance to go over here, and I'm just going to grab a couple of vertices on the back side of this one. I'm going to drop this down because this bunker sits pretty low actually. This bunker sits pretty low actually, so I'm going to drop this down, and to my reference that looks quite good. So I've got that one a little higher, that one a little lower. I've got a bit of a hill to cut in there. So now I can get into the geometry of this bunker itself and do the modeling on that. All right, first step to the interior modeling of the bunkers is to make sure geometry is all good for what we're going to do. And when I look at these, they look just fine. If you're looking at bunkers that are more interesting and sort of extreme shapes, deep corners, long fingers, narrow areas, you're going to see some problems. In fact, if I look at this one, let's take a look just for an example. So this corner over here, if I zoom in, you can see where this corner is a really sharp bend. You have edges that instead of meeting at a vertex in the middle and coming out like rays of sunshine, they come across. And that's just part of the automatic generation. It's not a problem in any other form of bunker modeling, especially when you're doing just the tools that come with OPCD. But for what I'm trying to do here, what we want is to have these consistent loops without any of these crosses here. So I'll pause and show you how we can fix those later. But for now, we're going to work on these up here. And there's nothing that we need to fix that I saw. I'm just going to look around quick. You're always going to, well, not always. You're most likely to see those problems where the bunker makes a sharp turn inward. So since these are kind of your standard sort of pedestrian shapes, you're not likely to see it. So I don't see anything there I need to fix. First step is we're going to space out these loops. So I call these loops, and this is the key to all the stuff you do in Blender for bunkers, or really any of the elevation work, because it makes for consistent slopes. What a loop is either a string of vertices or faces that go all the way around a shape in a consistent, unbroken line. So you can easily select these by holding down Alt and left clicking. So I'm going to take this one here, I'm going to hold down Alt and left click. You can see that it has selected that one inward loop all the way around the bunker. I have a plugin, I'll put it in the description, which makes it faster by not just using the Alt key, but just double clicking. So if I just double left click, it's going to select that loop. The other thing this plugin does is, if you look at this inside loop here, you would think this would count as an easy to select one, but if I Alt left click, I only get these 4. And the reason is loops only work in quads. And here you can see, yes, we have quads, which are rectangle shaped faces, but where these rays come out from these interior vertices, you get 2 that hit one there, you get 2 that hit one here, so every once in a while you get that. That breaks what it considers to be a string. So if I Alt left click, I only get from one to the next, where we have 3 meeting instead of a nice clean cross like that. So this plugin sees through that and considers this a loop. So double left clicking with the plugin will get me this entire loop. It's almost a must to have this plugin if you're doing this kind of stuff. It solves so many problems. Now the goal here is we're going to space these out a little more. We want to have a little more room to breathe when we're putting slope in on these, so that when you're coming in on the angle of the bunker, it just gives a little more natural flow into the sand. And I want more room to be able to do work on the outside. Now you might already know that by clicking the G key, whether you're selecting a vertice or a face or whatever, if you hit the G key, that's essentially, it stands for grab, and it lets you move something. So if I hit G, it's going to let me move that vertice. Same with if I have many selected. If I hit G, they're all going to move. See how that works? But what I want to do is actually want to slide these to space them out. If I'm looking at a top view and I just hit the G key, I can move the whole thing in one same direction. But what I want is to move them all inward. So if I hit G and then G a second time, so just rapid succession, G, G, it will slide them and they will only move along the edges that they're attached to. So I'm going to slide these in. I'm going to go to the next loop, G, G, slide, next loop, G, G, slide, and then I'm actually going to add one more near the edge. I'm going to slide it up about like that. Now to add a loop, the shortcut is Control R. So I'll show you that again. There's no loop here. If I go down here and I hold down Control and R, it's going to add a loop. Now it's going to add it in the direction and wherever you cross. So here it wants to add one across those faces. Here it could add in there. I'm going to add one here, left click, and then without clicking anything else, once you left click it sets it, but then you can move it. I'm going to move it up here and I'm going to left click again. Okay. Now I want to add and do the same thing on the outside of this bunker as well, because I want the slope leading into the bunker to have more space as well. So I'm going to double click. I'm going to get that whole loop on the outside. I'm going to G, G, slide it away a little bit. Then I'm going to add a couple more. Now once I do Control R to add a loop, before I click, if you use your mouse wheel, you can choose how many loops you want to add. I think we're going to go with, I think just 2 is what I've been doing on these. 2 or 3 is usually plenty. You don't want to go crazy adding these loops because it just adds more geometry, more faces, more tries. I imagine if you went too nuts, you're going to hurt performance. But this small amount isn't going to be a problem. All right, so I'm going to go over this bunker and do the same thing. I'm going to grab these loops, slide them in, and I'm just making a little more space. And I'll add one there. Slide this out a little bit and add a couple here. We'll do 3 on this one. We'll decide which is better later. All right, so now all the geometry has been fixed, nothing to fix, and we've added in a little bit more to help us out. So now we're just gonna model these. Unlike digging terrain, which is more like sculpting in Unity, where you have a brush or a circle shape where you're pushing and pulling, there is a sculpt mode in Blender, but I find it easier to do this with just moving vertices and moving geometry on the different axes. So if we do this one, the first thing we're going to want to do, most of these bunkers on this hole and this course in general are fairly flat bottom. There's kind of 2 different types. Some are kind of extreme where you're along the cliff edge a bit and stuff. But if you look at the reference, here's a reference. Most of these sand traps are fairly flat bottom with fairly shallow sides. So yes, you can do all of this with most of the standard tools, and yes, you can certainly do this by terrain digging, but I like the precision in here, and there are things that you can't do with those tools that we'll get to once we shape this. So I'm now in face mode. I've gone tab to face mode, select one face, and then if you do Shift G, it's going to let you choose, select all of what? All the same material. So now I have all of the sand material. I'm working on 2 bunkers at once here. You can do it with 1 bunker at once, of course, that's probably easier. But I'm going to try it this way since I have all these materials joined. Now, my intention is to drop these down a bit, but I don't want to drop everything. I'm going to Shift Alt left click, and I'm going to deselect this outer loop on each one, like that. I have proportional editing involved here, which means that it's going to be moving all the vertices next to the ones I've selected, or faces for that matter. We can go to vertex mode just to show how it works. Now I'm going to go G to move. Now remember, that's going to move everything. I'm only going to hit it once because I want to move the whole thing at once, right? I have proportional engaged. Now I only want to move it up and down. And depending on your view, you might think you're moving it just straight down, but if you went back to top view, you'll see that you've actually moved it a bit and up to the up and right as well. So the easy way to make sure you only are going up and down is once you hit G, before you touch anything else, just hit Z. A little blue line shows up, and that locks you to the Z axis. And then by scrolling your mouse wheel, you're going to show how much you're affecting around the bunker. We just want a little bit because we're kind of just doing the lip here. So now we're going to make a small amount. We're going to go down. You can see it's pulling the vertices that are not selected as well. If I made the circle bigger or smaller, it's going to pull more or less. I'm just going to go a little ways. So I'm going to go down where I can see a little better here how deep I'm getting. And then I just want to affect the ones really close by here for now. So I'm just going to drop down kind of a lip amount. And I'm actually using this deep rough. That's going to be my lip. It's going to blend into the bunker, but that's essentially going to be my lip. So there we go. I've got it dropped down just a little bit that way. Then sometimes I'll go back and do another bit with just a little bit larger influence to not make the lip itself steeper, but a little bit of the lead-in steeper, like that. It all depends on the style of your bunker, what you're going to do. Again, be careful. If your proportional editing circle's too big, you're going to influence the outside vertices, and you're going to pull away and separate from the mesh next to it. So we don't want to do that. All right, now we're actually going to make just a little bit of a concave to the bunker. So by holding down Control and using the negative and plus key, I can select more or less loops. So I'm going to go down till I'm just kind of grabbing the inside of this bunker, the inner area, G, Z, and now I'm just trying to do, again, I don't want to affect these surrounding vertices, but I want to just drop it down a little bit to give it just a little bit of a bowl. Like I said, they're pretty flat, but I want to give it a little depth that way, right? Okay, got it. Now, let's pop up a reference image and take a look at these bunkers. I'm going to put the reference on screen and talk about the things that we couldn't, all that we could have done with OPCD tools, we could have done in Unity. Now let's do something that we couldn't do there. First, let's take a look at the reference image again. And we're going to make this back curve of this bunker a lot taller lip than some of the others, as well as probably up in here. Now, just to make sure that I don't affect around it, or if I do, it's okay, I'm going to select that mesh too, shift click. So now they're not joined, but everything is engaged. We'll call it engaged. So we're going to go over here first. I'm going to use my circle select. I just kind of like it when I'm dragging. I'm going to try and grab just a few vertices here. And now with proportional, G, Z, up and down, a small influence. And I am going to lift this up a bit like that. So just this area has a taller lip. Now, it's not going to be perfect. You're not going to get, this is where artistic tweaking comes into play. I want this to kind of gradually become a slope that meets down in here. So I'm just going to grab a few of these in the area that it's coming down, and I'm going to raise those up a smaller amount, but enough that it's giving at least a little bit of a gentle transition like that, okay? Same with back here. Some of these, we're just going to raise them up just a little bit like that, and probably drop these down just a little bit. I'm just trying to make it look like a kind of a natural transition here. So this one looks a little odd. I mean, this is nitpicky stuff right now, but and maybe if I wasn't trying to record, I could find a little better way. But there, now I've got a steep high lip over there, and we talked about how there's a little bit more of a gentle influence over here. So the other way you can do this, if you don't want to make the lip taller, but you want it steeper, if you look at top view, 7 key, you can grab some of these vertices out here, go with proportional editing again. Now if I make it a little larger like this, and I start pushing towards the sand, watch what happens to how close together those loops appear. You can see that they get closer and closer, which means they're getting steep. So it's very steep that way. You can do the opposite direction of that as well. So since we want this edge of the bunker to be a more shallow lead in, we're going to stretch it out a little bit. So we're going to move it this way. we're also changing the shape of our bunker a little bit. So if you feel like it's becoming inaccurate, then you go to this side and you stretch it, just pull it back. I'm in top view. And now we have a very shallow bunker, a shallow entry lip over here. We can also move it up and down a little bit if we want with a little less influence. And what we end up with is this side of the bunker being pretty flat and shallow, and this side being pretty steep. And it's kind of that variation that adds realism. Now, I thought it looked, at least from the view we had and the lighting we had, that it was fairly steep in this corner. So I'm going to grab some of these out here, and I'm going to move it up a bit like this. And then I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to drop these down with like this. So we've got a really steep lip right there. Now you might be looking at this going, well, you didn't make the sand look very good. Now it's not very consistent. Easy fix, easy fix. We're going to drop this down. So that creates, now if you go up above and you were to grab these and do it from a top view, then you're going to be pushing and not just making it a deeper lip, but a steeper lip by making them close together. Don't ever make it fully vertical where they're on top of each other. The textures just do not work well that way. But you can go a bit more, kind of like that. And take a look from the side, see if it looks, yep, looks pretty good. It's steeper. And then there was also just a little, and you don't have to follow exact replicas of the reference images, but adding some, I noticed there was some kind of humps and bumps on this area. Adding some variance in, even if it's not on your reference images, will just add so much to it. So I'm gonna go to top view, and I'm just gonna, depending on how much proportional I use, I'm gonna find something that looks natural, and I'm gonna add just a little bit of wave action, kind of going in like that. Then I'm gonna go above those, and I was gonna make it shallower, but maybe I want to make it steeper there. I don't know. Does that look better? Does that look better? Up to you. I'm going to go down, I think. All right. Now, I know it seems like we're taking forever on one bunker, but you'll get fast at this. I can do a bunker in not that long, 10, 15 minutes, depending on exactly what I'm trying to do. So now I said I was going to help figure out how to fix where the sand just doesn't look natural. That should be flatter. It shouldn't be so wavy in here. So we're going to go to face mode, select a face, Shift G, select all the same material, and it's fine if we use that one over there as well. This is where it's important that we join these shapes, because if you try to do a smooth on separated shapes, they're going to separate from each other. So we're going to right click, and then what we want to do is smooth. All right. Now the shortcut for that is the O tool. So you would right click and do O. Oh, we have to be in vertex mode. So switch to vertex mode, then right click. There we go. Now we're looking for smooth, which is shortcut O key. All right. Now if we go over here to where we didn't like the look of that sand, we're going to leave this on all three vertices, although you can just do Z and then they won't move around back and front. They'll just go up and down. And we're going to increase the repeat here. So you can see by increasing it, we're going to stay on Z, I think. It's going to flatten out that bunker. It'll fix any of those kind of unnatural areas. And if you really want to, here's where you could, that's going to make it flatter and shallower. If you want to go back and redo your depth, you can just grab a few of the vertices in the middle and move it down. We're going to add just a little bit more of that bowl shape back in because it smoothed it out a bit. Maybe we should have waited till after we figured out the rest. Maybe dropping it is the last step. All right, just a little depth. So now we've got some kind of, some little bit more natural looking bunkers. Didn't have to do much with these, and I probably could have whipped these out in 5 or 10 minutes tops, but you'll get fast enough that it seems more viable. So there we go. Now I'm going to do the rest of this while recording. I'm not going to talk through each one, and I'll probably just speed it up. But I'll stop here and there to describe some of the things that we need to maybe talk about that are new, or to show things we've already talked about and how they can be used. So the next thing I'm going to do as you watch, I'm going to move to these two bunkers, do them the same way I did this. I am going to I'm going to combine these blends into one shape. I'm going to bridge them across so that there's one surrounding deep rough to change the material to. There's no vertices I need to fix that I can see because they're pretty much round bunkers. Oh, I spoke too soon. If you go in here and you look at this one, so if we look at this one, we've got some of those edges to fix. So why don't we just do that right now before I fast forward. Edge mode. So we want to get rid of these. We don't like them. We're going to select them all, shift left click, right click, and dissolve. Makes them go away, but it does not delete the face. Now we go to vertex mode. We need to connect these back towards the middle. So select two vertices, always one on the outside, one towards the middle, and hit J. That will join them. Shift click, hold J, J, and J. I go through this more in depth in one of my Prairie Dune bunker videos, so you can take a look at that one specifically on fixing meshes for more information on that. All right, I'm going to go to town on these and go ahead and pause, slow down if you need to, and I will stop when I have things I'd like to point out and discuss. Here we go. Okay, so in here, it's a little hard to tell. I'm just going to switch this back to a blend material so you can see what I'm probably going to fix or change here. Because there's only one vertex here in these large faces, you get a little bit of pointiness there, which is not my favorite. I wish this was a little smoother. Again, if you were to spline this in Inkscape, it would be a nice smooth curve. There'd be more vertices here. Doesn't mean we can't fix this though. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add some more, so we have areas to soften this curve. So there's something called the knife tool. That's a K is the shortcut. We want to turn that off and that on. This is snap to vertex. So knife, it's like cutting our faces in half, and it will add vertices and faces. I'm going to start here. So I'm connecting a new edge through there to here. Click. And I'm going to do it over here as well. Actually, I could just do it from this one because it's close to the edge. And it's a good idea to add on the other side as well. So what we're going to do is, let's see, we're going to go from here. We're just going to cut straight through here. And it should pretty much snap close to where that other one is. And we're going to do another one down this way to where we ended that one. Now over on this side, we actually created a quad, which is a 4 shaped here. No big deal, but if you want to keep it all tries, not a bad idea. Select these two, hit J. All right. So now what we've done is we have, we're going to grab this vertice. It's not perfect, so we're going to grab it. G with the snap enabled, snap to vertex, and you're just going to snap it that way. Now these are not joining to each other because they're not, they're not the same mesh. They're meshes that are aligned together, and these vertices are now on top of each other. So if I didn't have proportional or anything on, selecting there and moving it, it's going to separate them. That's okay. We want to leave these separate, but if we have proportional on, then it will move every vertex near it, including the one that's on top of it. So now We're just going to move it. Am I in top view? 7 key for top view. And that just gives my curve or mow area a little bit more, a little softer edge. So now it looks much more natural, right? This one's not bad because it's pretty much a straight line anyway. I'm not going to bother. But okay, now that we have this, we're going to change this to deep rough because that's our surrounding shape. All right, back to high speed bunker modeling. Here we go. All right, let's talk about another way that we can add some lip height without affecting our sand. The easy way to do this is to only select the rough shapes. So we have the rough and deep rough. Now I know what you're thinking. If you move this, you're going to separate it from the sand. But a nice trick is if we select this loop, Alt, left click or double click with that plugin, if you hide that, H key is the hide button. It looks like it's gone. It's not. It's just hidden. And if it's hidden, it cannot be affected by anything you do movement-wise. So now if we selected all these and we lifted this corner up and we're able to use a bigger proportional so we don't get this kind of harsh transition. If we go bigger, we get a better transition of the slope. And then you unhide, you'll see they're still connected, but we have a taller lip there. So that's a really nice way to do things too. If you know exactly what you're going for, you can hide it. Now I'd kind of like to have another loop in here. I only added 2. I'm going to add a third because I'd like to have some vertices down here for when we paint later. We're going to want something that's closer to the lip to vert paint because I happen to know exactly what my goal is. Now I'm just sliding these again, GG, respacing them now that I've done some of the moving around and stuff. Okay, so looking at my reference, there's also a bit of a deep lip on this right here. So we're going to go in and do the same thing on this one. We have the same shapes. We're going to Alt click or double click and get that and hide it. And now we are close to the green, which is not selected, so we're going to need to be a little careful. But so let's grab in here, and we're going to lift this up. Now we want to keep an eye on that pink blend shape. If our circle's too big, it's going to separate. So go down to a point where, go extreme. Okay, I don't see them separating, so now I know I don't have too many. And now we're going to pull this up a little bit, so we've got a little higher lip in that side. And the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to re-hide these. I'm going to make an overhang on this one. I want a little bit of a lip overhang on this corner just for some interest. It's very similar to the way we would do our steeper lip. We're going to grab these like this. I'm going to make it be more on this side. Go to top view, 7, and I'm going to drag these guys to where that one is actually overhanging. I said you don't want to be vertical because the texture projection from above will be very stretched. What we can do is I'm keeping an eye on these first 2 and how they are still visible, so I know my textures will be okay. And I'm gonna need to go down here, and I want to soften that transition a little bit, like that. Now, if you look at this, what I have is, if I unhide, it cuts back again. See how it cuts back in again? That actually is going to be okay. It won't stretch because as long as there's some angle, some slope, whether it's interior or exterior, it won't really matter. But I'm going to do a little more here. I'm going to grab these with almost no influence, and I'm going to pull it out like that. Now you can see we've got a pretty good overhang happening. I'm actually going to drop it down a little bit, like that. And then when you do this, you're going to have to go to these ones at the side and try and just move them around again for a little more natural transition, so it doesn't look so sharp and unnatural. Okay, so add 2 there. All right, so now we've got this overhang. What we accidentally created though is this point. It's very pointy. Not ideal. So I'm going to grab those same ones again, and I'm going to bevel them just a tiny bit, because you don't want to create a large. I'm going to go to edge mode. Now you don't want this point because it won't look nice, but if we do a Control B bevel, it's going to kind of split the difference and give us, now if I use the wheel, I can do a big round over, or I'm just looking for one small bevel. And I'm okay with it being vertical as long as it's a small area. You won't see as much stretching there. And then you're going to need to go to these. I'm going to snap them all the way to these vertices at the side. And that's our transition back to a more normal lip. You might see where the face looks kind of funny, so sometimes it's a good idea to grab these and join them. Tell Blender where you want the faces to split there. Okay, so now we've created a very tall, steep, in fact, overhanging lip. So grass will actually hang in the bunker. There'll be a nice shadow there. So, all right, that looks pretty good. I don't even think I'm going to bother with any of the little ripples like I did, but I will show you one other thing I haven't gone back and done on the other one yet. As you can see, these are separate right now. The sand and the deep rough are not part of the same shape like we did on the other, so we can't smooth. Watch what happens if we try to smooth all of our sand. Remember when we smoothed before, it didn't it affected the it didn't affect the outside because it was joined. If I smooth now, you can see how it separates. So you could do like we did before and hide the outside, and then when you do a smooth, you can do as much smooth as you want in here, and when you unhide it, it will be fine. But here's the other thing we can't do unless we join. So I'm going to take both sands and this rough, Control J join, vertexes, all, M for merge by distance. Now these are all one shape. All three of these together are one shape. There are no overlapping vertices here. If I turn these off, they all move together. Here's where I like to add some interest. I'm going to take these two loops, the outside ones, and I'm going to right click and do randomize R. You can change how much in this little pop-up down here. 0.015 to 0.018 is kind of where we're shooting for. And that just gives a little bit of up, down, up, down, up, down, just random movement. And when you combine that with vert painting for lips, it gives you kind of a jagged, again, more natural lip. I think a little chaos is key. So you can already see how cool that can look. Just a little more ragtag, even at Pebble. So we're going to go over and do this one. Again, we're going to take the loop that joins the two materials and the inside one. I'm going to do a randomize of 0.15 on this one. Ooh, 0.015. All right. There we go. So now we have those two done. All right. I'm going to save, and now I'm going to move on, and my reference also shows these joined, so I'm going to do these in a pair as well. I'm going to fast forward while I do that one, And then I will do this giant boy because he has some extra stuff going on. We'll do him with some narration. Okay, so next bunkers. All right, we have made it to the giant bunker in front here. Now we're going to be rigging this with deep rough just like the others, but there's a lot of areas where we're going to take a more gentle outline approach. So maybe it's a time to think ahead, go in here to the rough and decide where we might need to add or cut a vertex. So we know we're going to come around, we're going to follow the pink line here, but about right here where this dips in, we're going to take a more gentle line across. So I'm already going to start thinking about where I want to deviate and how I might want to cut. So I'm going to just use the knife right away, and I'm going to take this in a direction like, knife is finicky. It doesn't like to always snap, but we can clean it up later. We just need to try and get through. Man, it is really being, okay, we'll just go with this. So we're going to, and then we're going to let it follow along here. I can already see that I'm going to want to go there to there. I'm going to select 2 and do a join. Oh, it's not going to let me. All right, back to knife. Sometimes that works. Sometimes I don't know why. So we're going to go from there to there. All right, so we're just going to do knife instead. And we'll go from there to there. Now I'm visually looking at this going, all right, I can follow. I'm probably going to stick kind of out here. I'm just going to go a little wider here. Then I'm probably going to let it come up into this. So where do I want to probably hit there? I'm probably going to go to about here where I'll join up again. So, let's go out to about here. And if it doesn't do a good job with the vertex snapping, you can just grab it and move it where you meant to put it, like that. Okay. Going over here, you almost have a good departure point here, but let's be safe, and we're just gonna go over here like this, maybe that one. I think it helps if you're zoomed in. So we're gonna, no, maybe not. So we're gonna go from here. Knife is not behaving. All right. So that's giving us a little more room there. We're going to be following this out until it joins up in this area, so that's probably fine. Same with here, we'll probably let that go. I think we'll just let it follow along there. We're going to clearly follow here. Now on all these tongues that come out, we're just going to go pretty much straight across. So probably just come off of any of these here and across. We'll clean it up if we have to. We're just going to come off here. Looks like it'll probably be fine. All right, let's actually just go in here and see about doing that, and we'll see how it works. So we're going to come off probably on about this area. Let's move to the top-down view here. So we're imagining it's going to come off that way. Then it's going to come up this direction. Go like that. Yeah, that's going to work. We don't need to add anything. All right, let's join these before we go farther. I'm going to join that. And get rid of it. Then we're going to go. Let's take the faces that we want, and we'll join those. So we know we're going to need this. We're going to take all these. We're definitely going to come across from about this point. So we're going to go here. We're going to use these. And we're going to go about like that. Now on the front side, we'd already drawn out where we're going to take stuff. So we're going to grab through here. We're going to follow there. We added this extra stuff here, knowing we're going to go through there and take that. We're going to go kind of like this. That'll work. And the back side we're probably going to leave alone. No, I take that back. We're going to want to come out on this side too, maybe quite a bit even. So let's go just follow the natural path a little bit here. I think that'll be enough to move things around a bit. I think that'll be fine. So we're going to take all these and use the P key to separate by selection. Going to grab that whole shape we just cut out. We're going to join it to our surround, custom, and then we're going to delete the blend and change that to deep. Now we have our rough outline. Now is when we're going to refine it with our top-down view with proportional on so that we can get, well, I can already see I got to fix something here. First, we're going to grab, it's going to be a little tricky, isn't it? Okay, so we're going to grab those like that. All right, so what we want to do here is kind of use a very small proportional. All right, and we're going to start coming out this way. Okay, so you can see now that I have a pretty good rough outline around that bunker for deep rough. I'm happy with that. So now we're gonna go in, and this one's gonna need some of that mesh cleanup, some of that fixing. So let's take a deeper look at that. I'm gonna go through it a little bit slower than last time. Just talk about what we're looking for and what we need to fix. Okay, so let's go in and put the elevations in here. Now, when looking at the reference images, I could have picked a little bit more interesting hole to do this whole process on, because there's definitely not a lot of extra work needed here, especially this large front bunker. It's very clean. It doesn't require a lot of extra. It's a very flat bottom bunker. The lip is pretty consistent all the way around. So it really won't take too much, but I can show you some of the cleanup that's going to be needed here. So we're going to go to select just the bunker. We talked about these inner corners where we need to watch. So I'm going to first check anywhere that's got a tight inner corner. And it's real easy to miss this, and I'll show you how you can tell. I'm just going around and looking. Did a really nice job meshing this one. There's no way there's not some work here. Okay, so I'm going in here, select, and then hit the period key to zoom in. Couple here. Again, we're going to grab all these, right click and dissolve. Shortcut is D key. Then go to vertex mode and select two vertices, hit J to join. Now these are pretty close together. Here's another trick. If it feels like you're getting too many tries too close together, you can combine these into one. It'll still give you a loop as long as you have that plugin for loop selection. So you can just grab these two and do a M for merge, and then instead of doing by distance, because they're not close together, you can just do at center. Oops, I had that one selected too. Deselect that one, just these two. M at center. Now connect that one up here. Just gives a little bit less densely packed triangles in there, and it speed things up if you're in that kind of mood. Boy, these look really good. There's not much to do here. Also, I wanted to mention this cleanup. It may not even be necessary for the bunkers here at Pebble Beach. The only reason I'm spacing out these inner loops on the sand is because when you're doing bunker work, or when I'm doing bunker work like this that requires more extreme bunker shapes, bigger depths, taller lips, and more variation, I want more room in this area so the lip can climb and be spread out in different ways. For Pebble, it's a little less important, but it's just become something that I'm just doing just in case. Here's how you tell if you did it right. If you select this loop, and you're going to space it out by doing a GG for the shortcut, and you try to do that loop slide, and it doesn't work consistently, you'll know that you have more to fix. Now this is working, so we know we're all good. So we're going to go to our space out, and then we're going to Control R, add our loop here. That's going to become our second randomizer loop to give a little bit of interest to the lip. All right, now I'm going to go to this outer shape, and I'm going to grab this and stretch it out a bit and add just 2 in there, since I'm not doing anything too crazy with this lip. It's a pretty consistent clean lip on this bunker. So now we're just going to inspect it. It doesn't have much of any depth yet, which is fine. That's great. I like doing that in Blender. I like it a little more just flat, coming out of Unity as terrain. As long as it's nice and smooth, that's kind of the key. But I'm coming over here and I'm looking at this. Now I'll do a different video on ways to use the same Blender modeling of terrain to get your greens exactly right. But I'll do a quick one here. I'll show you. Everybody kind of knows this hole and knows there's quite a ridge through here. I'm not going to get this accurate because I don't have a green map up right now, but you can use all these same techniques to adjust any elevation. So I'm going to grab everything in the area and go to vertex mode. Now, again, this is not going to be accurate, but I'm just going to show you. You could just grab a few vertices like this, and using proportional, I'm going to go G and then hit Z, so only up and down. I'm going to use my mouse wheel to change the influence size. Now, I can add in green elevations in the same way that I can add in bunker elevations. In this case, I'm going to narrow because that'll be the top height. And then I'm going to come out a little deeper into the green here. So that's an easy way. And if I make it a narrower circle of influence, you can have a much sharper hill. And if I go out, it's going to be a more gentle slope. So there, I added a little bit there. You know, if you want to tweak, you go over here, pull it up. That's not going to be accurate, but we all know it's there, and so I just wanted a quick show it's possible to do any terrain work here. All right, looking at my reference, it's such a flat portion of this hole that I don't think there's a lot I want to do. I think I am going to add just a little bit of center height to some of these fingers that come in here, just a little bit. So I'm going to grab these middle verts in here, because you can see how kind of flat these are. I'm going to go and I'm just going to give them a little bit of curve, just a little bit of hill in there. And maybe I want to actually come down here and do it towards the end a little more. Just showing you more of how you do elevation work, can do elevation work. Just giving them a little more influence, a little more height in here. I try to stay consistent about which verts I am, how close to the edges I am. All right, I gave it just a little more. Now, most of the elevation in this is just the bunker itself. So face mode and grab just by that material. Now, this is just my process. Depending on your bunker style, it might be different. I usually deselect just that outer loop, just to give the lip a little more. And as I come down, I'm going to adjust my wheel size to see my influence. I only want it to influence the stuff very close. We're just doing the lip itself at this point. I'm just going to drop it. I'm dropping about negative. I'm watching the stats up in the top left corner there. Proportional size, a drop of negative 0.14 meters there. I don't even know what I've been doing on every bunker. I couldn't tell you exactly, but I'm gonna go, that just eyeballing it, that looks pretty good to me. Then again, I'm gonna shrink my influence size here to just the middle part here. And this is where I'm gonna give it just a little bit of that bowl shape. So I'm going back to the Z move, but I'm gonna increase this so I'm just touching the edges. Oh, I just noticed I have something else selected back here. How interesting. Oh, I know. So since I selected all of these, here's a problem. I almost missed. Since I selected all these meshes to show you the green movement, when I then selected my bunker material, it didn't just select this shape's material, it selected all the bunker material in all my selected shapes, including these back here, which I didn't want to do. So I should come out and I should reselect. I'm going to drag select just this sand trap and this rough surrounding it. I don't want any other sand to be affected here, right? So I'm going to go back in now and redo my material selection. I'm going to deselect just that ring, go back to my drop. Okay, now I'm going to go back to deselecting into the center more so I can do the kind of the bowl shape here. It's a pretty flat bottom bunker, so I'm actually going to leave it pretty close to the outer edge. I'm going to go just till I start seeing some influence of the whole surrounding area, so everything's kind of dropping in a little bit. All right. Now I'm going to do the randomize. So I've gone into vertex mode. Now these shapes I don't believe are joined. Nope. So we're going to grab them and do Control J join. Select all vertices, M to merge by distance. Make sure this is set to 001. All right, now these shapes are one. We're going to grab the outer two loops, right click, R for randomize, randomize vertices, or it's down here in this menu. And do this just a little bit at 0.018. Okay, pretty good. So we have a fairly flat bottom bunker with a little bit of interest in the lip. And really, this one, that's about all we have to do. Although, give it a good look around, see if there's anywhere you want to change. I'm seeing some of these fingers that reach out here. They didn't get the same amount of drop in them. So I'm just going to zoom in on these areas. And you can see you might need to go in here and play. I'm just going to grab some of these that are high. And I'm just going to drop down so that they also get some drop. And when I talked about smoothing the whole thing, you don't have to smooth the whole thing. So if you just want to come in here and grab an area where it's a little more wavy than you'd prefer it was, and then you do right click O to smooth. I'm just going to stick with Z and there. I'm just going to smooth just that area out. Now I'm going to go, I saw there's a spot over here. Yeah, so you can see it climbs up, but it didn't actually drop any of this area in here. So how do we want to do this? We're just going to grab pretty much everything through the middle of this one that didn't get dropped yet. And we're going to drop it like that. That one's not too bad. I mean, you can get nitpicky and you can just try and make it consistent. Looks good. Looks fine. You can maybe drop this a little bit. Didn't really drop on the outside there. All right. How are we looking? Take a look, see if we see anywhere more wavy than we want or any weirdness. Looks pretty good, looks pretty good. Pretty happy with that. All right. You can see the bump I put in the green here. Also not, accurate or done. You can use smoothing in the same way here. Be careful when you're smoothing. Don't touch the outer. Unless you're joined shapes, you do not want to smooth anything that is on the perimeter of a shape or it will separate from the mesh. So I just grabbed everything kind of around it. I'm going to do smooth just a little so that that mound I created just kind of blends a little better. We'll tweak that in a later video. All right. That's all of the mesh cleanup, modeling, and detail work for elevations. Next, we're going to do the vertex painting. So I'm just going to make, this video got long enough, I'm going to do a different video talking about the vertex painting and then bringing this into into Unity to show you how it all looks when we're done. All right.